Hey everybody, welcome to Business Spotlight. I have my brother here, Ryan Williams of Industry Threadworks. Ryan, man, you are the name in the space. You've helped more people than I even know about in getting their apparel brands up and going. And it seems to be a very, very complex and tricky industry that a lot of people try, but kind of fail at. So, man, how would you get started in this? Let's start there.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to it, man. It's one of those oh sorry. Yeah, it's one of those things where it seems easy on the outside because everybody you see on the internet has a clothing brand and they
Yeah,
all look great. And everything you see on Instagram is like everything's all smooth, it looks badass, it looks killer. But then on the back end, the reality of making that look smooth on the front end, it's usually just a complete disaster on the back end. Most of them, even at like a 400% markup on product, are usually not profitable because they have their cost of goods, their marketing, their overhead, and then so their profit margin goes from like 75% to like 5 or 10% or sometimes negative. So there's brands that are mid seven figure brands that are making literally no money because their back end is kind of a mess, and the front end looks great and they're selling all the shit, but the back end is like there's nothing there. So it's one of those things where it looks way easier than it is.
yeah.
But that's kind of our job, is helping people navigate the back end. So when they set up the front end, it's actually lucrative and profitable and scalable, and they have the systems and processes in there to actually grow it and have fun with it, rather than just doing a side project that ends up sapping all your bandwidth and your fun and energy out of your life. That's really what it is, man. It's frustrating.
So how do you get into it?
Uh, First thing I did was getting out of the military in 2008, and a friend of mine, another buddy I was instructor with, we like, hey, we didn't want to be poor anymore. Didn't want to be in the military. This shit sucks. Let's do something else. So we went through like a dozen different business plans. Everything from Navy SEAL party planners to like tour guides and everything. And then like t-shirt company was the very last one on the list, but it hit a lot of markers for us. And we're like, okay, easy to start, easy to scale, low capital investment, high profit margin, and it capitalized on the one thing that we had was, our attachment to the SEAL community. So
Yeah.
we built that in an apparel line, sold my half of that 5 years later, built and sold a bunch of other ones, a kettlebell company. And then after I sold that, I took a little break, and a friend of mine was starting his apparel line and really struggling. They were doing like 100,000 a year in sales, and it was a side project and still his day job. And he was just like getting crushed by his manufacturer. His website developer was screwing him. He was just a mess on the back end. So we came in like, hey, look, it's a really cool concept. It's a really cool brand. Here's how I ran my stuff. Why don't you try this or add this in, or this is how we run production. So we ended up streamlining all the back end for him and helped him scale from 100,000 to 4.5 million in 3 years.
Damn.
And that was kind of how Industry Threadworks was born. It's like, well, just taking everything that I learned over building and scaling my own brands, and like on the back end, like let's plug in the front end to the back end, this framework that works and scalable, create a platform and infrastructure for them to build off of, and then let the brand owner like do what they need to do, go out there and be the face of it, and grow and show and do all like the brand owner things.
Yeah.
So that's how it started. And then it kind of grew the last 7, I guess we're on year 8 now doing this. And we're in our little, this is one of our little like warehouses. This is our overflow warehouse and our little like, showroom area.
Little warehouse.
this
Little.
this one's only like, I think, 4,000 square feet. We have another, it's still pretty small. It's only like 6,000 square feet, but that's where we do all the pick and packs. We do a lot of fulfillment for brands too. We have like
Right.
2 dozen brands. We handle all their fulfillment and customer service for all the back end stuff. It's like when
Yeah.
people start apparel brands, especially any company, but I think apparel brands are especially prone to this,
Yeah.
where they just get fixated on the cool stuff, and it's fun and it's sexy and it's rad. And then like when you make sales, you're like, awesome. But then
Yeah.
now I got to go fold the t-shirts up. Now I got to go process the orders. Now I got to go put labels on. Now I got to drive them to the USPS, and
Yeah.
it becomes a double-edged sword, because you're happy you got sales, but now you're upset that like you got to do all this fucking shit to fulfill it.
Yeah.
we just started offering fulfillment for our clients, and that turned into a whole other business that we separated last year. And it's been great, man. A lot of challenges, and you've been instrumental in helping us, navigate those challenges. So it's been really cool.
Man, I appreciate that, but I just want to highlight something you just said because people don't realize that you built a business out of doing the hard stuff, out of doing the complex stuff, out of doing the stuff that most people don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot that goes into that because you could take that same concept and go into almost any industry with it, crush it because you're picking up the slack that people don't want to touch.
Yeah, totally. One of the interesting things about apparel brands too is that most apparel brand owners fit a certain type where it's usually easier to build an apparel brand with a face and like a personality attached to it.
Yeah.
And the personality and type of person that wants to go out and build an apparel line and be the front of it and do all the cool stuff, it's almost like a rock star personality, which is great. But the rock star is not the one, writing the checks on the back end or setting up the scaffolding or doing the guitar tuning and all that. In the beginning you are, but the rock star is meant to go out there on stage and do rock star shit. And when you get big enough, you want to be a big enough rock star, you need a team behind you. You need the infrastructure, both digital and physical, to be able to support that stage and you going out there and do that. And when you have that, you can get really big because now you've got a personality type that is working within their strengths. And you've got a whole team behind you that is working within their strengths. Whereas before, when you're starting your one-man show, man, you're doing the things you're good at, but you're also doing all the shit that you're not good at.
And you hate.
And you hate it. Yeah. And it's very, very frustrating. But that's also why most apparel brands, even the successful ones, cap out around $300,000 in revenue, because that's about the point where one person can do all that. But once you get to like 500 or 750, like, okay, you got at least one part-time employee, you got a full garage, you probably got to look at getting a commercial warehouse space. So there's limitations to how big you can get it. But yeah, man, you're right. The personality types is what it comes down to. So I think in any business, if you can find a personality type like that wants to go, like if you're good at infrastructure and details and back end stuff, find somebody who's good at the front end stuff and partner with them. Be like, you go do this. Like, I'll build the fucking stage. You go on stage and be a fucking rock star,
Yeah. So what do you think some of the better lifestyle brands are that you've seen that people should model? And what do they do that makes them successful?
I think first off, you have to live it. Like, you have to really live it. And the first thing I tell every apparel brand owner is that apparel brands don't actually sell a lifestyle. Apparel brands don't actually sell apparel. They sell a lifestyle. Because apparel is just a way for people to get involved with the lifestyle that you create. Like Guns N' Roses t-shirt, right? Like any band tee, like you wear a t-shirt because that's how you want the world to view you. It's like a tattoo that you wear for the day. So the better you can define what it is that brand means, the easier it's going to be for people to get behind it and sell it. So I think first one that comes to mind is probably Live Fit, and Randall Pitch has done a phenomenal job of like living it, talking about it, doing it, like maintaining his life where he's not like you've seen those people where like they preach one thing, like Liver King, like preaches one thing, and go fraud.
I'm natural. I'm natty.
Yeah. Dude, you can't fake it on the internet for too long anymore, man. No. It's too close. Like with social media, it's just impossible to fake things at a level that's scalable now. So, and people get found out. So I think the biggest thing is just build a brand around what you authentically like and care about and who you really are. And then you don't have to fake anything. You don't have to really even create anything. You just document the shit that you're already doing. And I think Randall Pitch has done a phenomenal job of that, because Live Fit was just born of him like being a personal trainer and create some cool shirts about living a fit lifestyle. And then that just steamrolled and escalated. He's really good at the aesthetic, but he's also really good at the branding and creating the lifestyle, and not just the aesthetic on a t-shirt, but the aesthetic of what does that mean, and capturing that in like a piece of content, whether that's a short video or a photograph or something where you're like, fuck, that looks like exactly like I would imagine it would look. I want that in my life. And that's what gets people to buy products. They want to pull that into their life and have that be a part of their life.
Yeah. It's almost like they're just doing what they do every day. They're congruent with it, and they have a T-shirt or some type of clothing to match. Like I think of Vans back in the day. This is going to date us, but Vans and like Red Bull, right?
Yeah.
That's that's what it is. It's a
Mhm.
lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly, man. And Red Bull, like those are great examples of a brand that's not really built around a specific person or a name. But they've done a phenomenal job of their like creating a lifestyle. And
Yeah.
interestingly enough, with apparel, like you can't buy Red Bull apparel. Like even though they could sell, you know, tens of millions or probably $100 million worth of Red Bull apparel,
Yeah.
they don't do it. And the only way that you can get Red Bull apparel is if you're a sponsored athlete. So that's why. So the
Uh,
value of having like a Red Bull hat or like a Red Bull T-shirt is super high because you literally can't buy it. You know.
that's
So
pretty cool.
they've done something pretty interesting with apparel in that space where they don't actually sell any apparel. They're
Sell it.
using it as a they're using it as a value exchange.
That's pretty cool, man.
Well, then a
Um,
brand like Supreme is selling like $500 T-shirts, and like the regular like the brand, it's a regular ass T-shirt, but it's $500 because the value of the brand itself, over whatever 10, 15 years they've been around is that's just what it's become. They're really selling
yeah.
$500 bricks too, but that's an
Are
exception.
they
Everybody,
really?
yeah, dude, they're selling some
Oh
crazy
my
stuff.
god.
Yeah, but they're a
It's
good
like that
example.
paperweight.
Yeah,
Somebody was selling like a paper clip or a paperweight. It was like $2,000. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Like who buys that?
dude, it's branding, man. Same thing with Yeti, like Yeti coolers and Arctic
Yeah.
coolers. I, I mean, I could be wrong on this, but when I read the story originally, I think they're actually the same manufacturer. It's just that
Yeah.
Yeti has a better brand and people pay more to be associated with quality. That's why
Yeah.
people put Yeti stickers on their trucks. Like shit, $300, $400 cooler. That's expensive. I'm expensive. I'm putting a Yeti sticker on my Tacoma or whatever it is,
Yeah. And
Branding's huge.
branding is everything.
Mhm.
So what do you think keeps those top brands? Like if you had to pick like five things that they all do, right? What would you say it is besides having congruency and just living it? Like is
Yeah, that's a really good question. There's a few things, but um, there's two ways to grow something in longevity because a lot of times, like there's been certain brands that'll pop up for a certain amount of time and they peak
yep,
and then they just disappear. There was a brand in the military that did that, and they were super popular for about 18 months, and they dropped off the planet because they came around a specific time in the military time where the wars are winding down. A lot of people were getting out, and a lot of like young veterans, like mid 20s, are getting out, and they wanted kind of goofy T-shirts, like "I'm good at war," like with like unicorn dicks on it and stuff. I'm like, that's cool, but
yeah,
however, that was a very unique time in
yeah,
military history and veteran history, guys getting out, and that demographic eventually got married, got girlfriends, they got kids. Now, they're not 25 anymore. They're like 30, 37. They're not walking around with like unicorn dick t-shirts on. The girlfriend's like, hey bro, like you ain't getting out of the house with a unicorn dick t-shirt. So, but that demographic was never replaced either.
yeah,
So their demographic outgrew their current the branding, and they
hmm
never replaced that demographic with the new brand. So the brand just died.
yeah,
There's some other factors of that too, but there's basically if you can follow your audience along a trajectory. So say you start out
mhm,
in your 20s or your 30s, and you have a brand that's around you, and then the brand can evolve as you evolve.
yeah,
Like you get into married stuff, maybe the brand becomes a little more mature. You have kids, maybe you do like fanny packs and dad gear or whatever it is, but you can have the
yeah,
brand mature with you along the life cycle, and then the audience, it's along their life cycle too. The other way to do it is where you develop like a super classic look that is you're always going to have people coming into it and going out of it. Like John Barbados, for example, is a great example of that. Fantastic quality t-shirts. Like I just bought like this isn't one of them, but like a Guns N' Roses t-shirt or Motley Crue t-shirt. It's $125 t-shirt. I
yeah,
bought a bunch of them because I'm like, well, I'm a t-shirt nerd. But also they know their demographic. They know it's like people have money to spend, people that are in this demographic, the time frame that have enough, they grew up on like Guns N' Roses and Motley Crue. Now they have enough
yeah,
money to pay $125 for a nice t-shirt, and it's a high quality product that people really dig, I'm
Yeah.
like, they did a great job. So their demographic, and maybe, you know, in 10 years, I won't be wearing Motley Crue t-shirts. Maybe I'll move on to polos or something, whatever old people wear. But there'll be somebody coming along that will replace me within that demographic. So there's two ways to do that, and that's on the front end branding. And the back end is infrastructure development, which is very simple. You have your digital infrastructure, like your website and your social media handles, obviously need to be maintained, and your physical infrastructure, which is your warehouse and all that. But I think most importantly, and the thing that probably gives the most people problems, is the financial infrastructure. Because most of these brands, when they're scaling, don't actually make any money. Like when you're scaling from 100,000 a year to 5 million a year for an apparel brand, you're dumping all that money back in. So like, even though you got a 7-figure apparel brand, you're probably not pulling any money out, doing it to yourself, because you got to continually feed the machine to grow. And so it's very frustrating when you're building those, because it never feels like you have any money. And that's why the financial literacy is so important, because in order for you to actually pull some money out and live off of it, and maintain your enthusiasm for putting all this energy and effort into the company, you have to figure out when you can pull money out and how much to keep your upward trajectory, but also, fill and maintain your lifestyle.
That makes a lot of sense. What do you think? So for me, I'm guessing it has to be something along the lines of, you either have a company and you need you want to promote it, you want walking billboards, right? Because that makes sense. Or you have to be some type of, I don't want to say influencer, it's a bad term. I hate the term. But pseudo celebrity, right? That you're going to sell no matter what, because you don't really have to put too much marketing dollar behind that brand. And then you can make it profitable through those growing stages. But what's that exit plan or exit strategy if you build up and let's say you're 5 million or 10 million a year?
Good question. It's tough. You build the brand to where it's faceless, to where, like, say like Vans, for example. I'm in the apparel space. I don't know who the fuck owns Vans. I have no idea. I never have. And Rebel, I have no idea who owns Rebel. Probably, I mean, that's probably a publicly held company. I don't know. But when you build a company like that, it's much easier to sell, because you don't have to replicate. It's just a business like any other business. And you look at the EBITDA and you, whatever the valuation is for that, and whatever the multiple evaluation is for your particular demographic or market. Usually apparel brands are around a 4x multiple of EBITDA, or basically we would consider like profit. Most apparel brands aren't very complex, so there's not a whole lot of like real estate or anything. It's usually just profit. So that's the easy way to do it. It's much harder when you have an apparel brand that is based around a personality. So like Randall Pitt from Live Fit, or some of these other brands where like you have a person, a persona who embodies the brand. It's much more sticky. And usually in those situations, sometimes they're impossible to sell. Sometimes you just can't sell it because you can't separate the brand from the person. But when they do, there's usually a exit clause where like the person will sell the company, but they'll still stay on as an employee or an ambassador or whatever for the company for 3 to 5 years or whatever it is. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's easier to grow a company or an apparel brand. It's easier to grow it faster if you have a face for it and pushing it, but it makes it much more difficult to exit because you have to separate the brand from yourself. The other way to do it, and we have some clients that are doing this now, is they'll build the brand around themselves and then get it. The idea is to get it so big and then slowly start separating and creating distance from your personality and your personal brand and the brand itself, and then position it for sale. That usually takes a couple of years, but I think that's a really good strategy if you have the long-term play of like, okay, I'm gonna sell this in 5 years, and you spend the first 2 or 3 years building it up, and then the next 2 years separating it. I think that's a very viable strategy. But most people who do apparel brands aren't very like forward. They usually think a whole lot about stuff. They're just like, what I want a t-shirt. It's fucking rad. Let's do it, which is great. But that's why they need somebody like us on the back end to be like, hey, that's awesome. Do this. But here's how we can make it work in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the line. But it's like any partnership, man. I mean, you got to have somebody who's like the visionary and the big picture and the rock star of it. then somebody on the back end who's going to package all this up and be like, cool, let's do this. Here's how it's actually going to function and work.
Yeah, execution.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, Rocket Fuel, Gino Wickman, I think does a great job of describing it as visionaries and executioners, or visionaries and integrators. That's it. Yeah. That was a really useful book.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about what the best brands do and what separates them. Now, walk us through the common mistakes or the top things that you see going wrong when someone comes to you and be like, hey, Ryan, I need your help.
Oh, man. The number one thing I see people falling victim to is thinking that it's going to be easy, because they see so many brands and they think they're all killing it, because nobody talks about the bad shit. They don't talk about, I sold $1 million, but we don't have any money. Nobody talks about that stuff. So they see this very polished, very nice thing, and the brand owner is always making it look like, dude, I'm fucking balling. This is awesome, doing cool shit. Because that's kind of what you have to do in most brands to sell the image, is you got to be the image. So everybody who goes into it has a very unrealistic expectation of return on their time and energy and capital and investment. And when they're not millionaires in 6 months, they get upset. And like our job, we focus on relationships and longevity and really helping these brands grow and scale. So oftentimes when brands come to us and like, we want to do this, I tell them like, hey man, you could totally do that, but there's way easier ways to make more money than to start a brand. And they always want to do, like, we want to do this custom tracksuit, this custom athletic wear. And we're like, hey man, we can totally do that.
Yeah.
But you might not know, but those minimums are like 1,000 unit minimums. And it's going to take 3 to 9 months to even get product. And then you have no idea what your sizing ratio is going to be. You have no audience. So you don't even know if you're going to sell it. Like you're going to spend $250,000 to $350,000 getting this thing started, and it might not even work. And they're like, oh, wow. So then we tell them like, hey, do that in 3 years. Once the business is rolling and it's generating money, then roll into like the custom cut and sew, and you'll have money and capital to do, the tech packs and all the design work that goes into it, and multiple sampling runs. But in the beginning, dude, just pick a blank t-shirt off, whatever blank, like Next Level 6210 is fantastic. Middle of the road blank. It's a great 60/40 blend. Do your designs, put them on those, do 3 to 5 of those, get them out on a basic Shopify website, and see if they fucking sell. Just go do that. Don't focus on the product, focus on the lifestyle, focus on what the lifestyle is going to be about, what the brand is about in the big vision for it. And then let the products kind of follow that. And if people dig it, they'll buy it. And if they don't, you just saved yourself a lot of money. Yeah. And even if you're successful with it, you're never going to be 100%. Like maybe if you nail it, you're going to be like, 90% there, 80% there. And then you'll adjust, and you do the first run of like 100 units and you sell out, like, awesome, but I want to tweak this. And you do another run of 200 units, and you get a better price break, you get a better margin. Like, okay, this worked, but now I want to change this. So it's a constant progression of just readjusting. I look at it like sighting in a rifle, where you've got in the beginning, like you just want to get, because
on paper.
People have a rifle, you just want to get on paper, because people don't know you can't just pick up a rifle and put sights on it like it's just drilling the X. It doesn't work like that. You might be, aiming here, but you'll hit over here or something. Yeah. So you fire a couple rounds, see where it hits, and you're like, okay, we're hitting here. We want to hit here. We're hitting here. So we do one initial run. Okay, boom. But it's good. We're on paper, but we want to change the material. We want to change the logo. We want to change the colors, whatever. So you're like, okay, change it up, fire again. Fuck, we're here. Okay, we're closer. We're closer. So you just keep getting closer until finally you're on the X, meaning like you have a product that you know the blanks, you know the inks, you know the style, you know your sizing ratio, your demographics, your market, your like everything is set, and you're selling every time. That's like when you're hitting the bullseye, and that's the time to what's called fire for effect in the military. We're just like, hey, unload. You're on it, just unload, and that's where you start ordering high volume, like 500, 1,000, 5,000 units, because your product is good, your market wants it, your sizing ratios are on, that your infrastructure on the back end can handle it. Like but people get ahead of themselves, and that's kind of like, I don't know. That's what we do. I nerd out on that shit though.
Yeah.
But most programmers don't even think about that stuff, and they should, because it's super important.
Yeah, but this transcends this industry, right? This is like business 101 that people don't think about, and that's why they jump into something and get destroyed.
Yeah, most of programmers are not very good businessmen.
Yeah.
I'm not even that good. I just suck less than most other people.
Well, like we've stepped on enough landmines. You know what I mean? I think
true.
I found more ways not to do things than to actually do them.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So I just know which path to walk and which path not to walk.
That's exactly what we do, man. Like I've ran back and forth through this apparel brand forest for 15 years, and now I know the path. Like, you want to go this way, this is where you want to go. Like, okay, cool, I know the way there. You want to go this way, cool, I know the way there. Don't step in that pothole. Like, it's really big over here. Like, don't do this. Yeah, it's been a wild ride, man.
That's cool. How do you think? I haven't asked this on other spotlights, but how do you think Chat GPT and some of this AI stuff impacts and enhances what you do?
Man, it's going to be interesting, dude. I would love personally some more automation in the production side of things. I think we are doing, like, we built our own calculator for like sizing ratio and sales trajectories and stuff like that, which surprisingly no other apparel brand I've ever met like does it to the level we do. But I think that's probably going to be the first thing that gets taken over by AI, because it's just a math equation. And as soon as you plug in, you know which variables to look at, and you know how to pull and plug them in. It's actually a very simple algorithm. It's just most people don't do it. So that would be something that I think is going to be really, really beneficial, because that will help make brands more efficient, which will help them make more margin, which will help them like actually scale better. So I think that's probably the easiest. But the art that AI develops is, well, at least right now, the stuff that I've seen, it's cool, but it's a very specific style. And maybe AI will develop into different styles of art, just like any artist. Like, each artist has its own different type of style that they work with. Like, if you have two different artists to draw you, a dragon, you have like, Puff Mad Dragon over here, like Game of Thrones Dragon over here. They're both dragons, but two different artists can create that very different. So as AI evolves, we might see a wide difference of different types of artwork, or it might just have a hive mind and create the same thing. We don't really know yet. But also, I think art is a very human thing, and I think appreciation of art is so subjective that I don't think the artistry part, like, humans know what's cool. And I think that's what apparel brands come down to. Like, what do you think is cool? Who in your audience connects to also what you think is cool, and then creating that product into, that vision is some kind of product, whether that's, apparel product or guitar, whatever that fits within your scope. But I'm not sure yet. But I do think on the content creation side, it's going to be interesting. This is something that we're looking at using more as well, is just maintaining, because a modern apparel brand needs a lot of content generated for their SMS campaigns and their email campaigns and all the marketing materials and stuff. So I think that's probably going to be maybe the lowest hanging fruit for something in AI, to somebody come in and be like, hey, write me, a 3-paragraph thing about this particular type of product, or this particular like thought or vision or whatever it is. And I know for me, like, I find it difficult to just create something from scratch. But when I have a template of like somebody writes something down, I'm like, oh, that's good. I can modify it and change it, and I can build it into something that's really cool. But it's difficult for me to just like poof out of nowhere, like create something. I'm not much of an artist. Like, I'm more of a designer. Like, I just move shit around on paper until it looks cool, but I don't actually create anything.
Yeah. You'll put your own spin on it, but you want a base level there.
Yeah, it's a lot easier for me to just modify something than it is to like create something from scratch.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I messed around with it a little bit. It's cool, but it doesn't get all the intricacies that I would need. Yeah, I'm sure it will soon. It's actually frightening.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting, man. We might be on the precipice of like a whole new chapter of humanity. Fucking Skynet.
Dude, that's what I keep asking. I'm like, have you guys not seen Terminator? Like, I saw a video with swarm drones, right, that land on you and they shoot a little projectile.
Yeah,
Apparently, nobody watched Terminator, or they don't think it could be real. Like, it could happen.
it's no joke, man. It's no joke,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah. And then I asked somebody, like, in the know, like, hey, I heard a couple reports of these robots or these AI things that actually turned on people. Is that true? And he's like, I can't confirm it, but what does
Interesting.
that tell you? What does that tell you? But we still want to dip our toe in that water.
Well, Elon's a pretty smart guy, and he's very afraid of it. So I think
He's
that
petrified.
he's afraid of it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I'll trust him.
yeah. I don't know enough to know anything about it, but if Elon's afraid, I'm like, okay, I'll be afraid too.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Trying to think. If someone's starting out, right, and this could be general business advice, but what like a couple tips that you would tell them starting out in this type of field space?
Honestly, just take the first step. That's the thing. It
Yeah,
has to do with most business too. Is like you can plan out steps 1, 3, 5, 10, 50, whatever.
yeah,
But I've never been in a position where I planned where step 5 actually looked like step 5. Because it's usually I find it's good to have two goals. Like one super massive goal is like,
yes,
step 100. Like, okay, I want
yeah,
to build, a $10 million company or brand or whatever it is. And then you have step 1. But steps 3 and 5, just have an idea of it, but don't really spend too much time worrying about it, because
yeah,
I found that once you take that first step, you'll gather the information and step 2 will become very apparent. You
yeah,
might not know what step 3 is, but you're going this general direction,
yep,
and step 2 becomes apparent. And then you're like, okay, well, I think I'm supposed to go here. And then by you taking the actions of taking the next step will appear in front of you. You'll meet people, you make connections, you'll learn techniques, you'll learn sourcing, like through the actions of doing it, you will learn so much that you would never have been able to know had you
yeah,
not taken those first couple steps. So I would say, you know, learn as much as you can, but also realize where that point is where you don't really need to learn everything. You just need to learn, number one, what direction you want to go, and
yep,
then number two, what the first step is, and then just take action after that, and you'll just figure everything out and just be
yeah,
open to change. And I think that's in any business is a recipe for success, because if you just keep doing that over a long enough timeline, learn, adjust, learn, adjust, learn,
yep,
adjust over long enough. I mean, you have no choice but to succeed.
yeah. Amen. People, I think they overcomplicate it and they want to overeducate themselves. And I think a big problem with this, and we could talk about this on many levels, but where they're getting the information from, you don't know what they actually did or did not do. Unless you're like reading a book that Elon wrote or Bezos wrote or somebody that actually built something, and even they're not going to expose all the steps, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you have to learn by doing. And by you sitting on the sidelines, you're never going to figure that out.
Yeah. And I think also too, the evolution of information and schooling in America and all over the world, I think is massively changing, because we're realizing that our parents used to tell us, hey, you need to go to college to get a good degree so you can get a good job so you can have security, which was true
Yes.
when they grew up. And so now it's not like they're trying to steer you the wrong direction.
Yeah.
They're giving you the best information they have. It's just not accurate anymore. So, and in fact, even if you have somebody who's like, even like I'm what I would consider like top of my game in apparel manufacturing, like brand building, as far as this one specific, like very small niche.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody in the world that knows what we know about doing this, working with hundreds of
You are
companies.
like Rain Man when it comes to that.
When
Anytime I've asked you something,
there's
you
very
send it
little,
over. I'm like, oh my God.
but even knowing all that I know, if I were to just like, oh, I'm going to go make a course in college and go sit there for 6 years,
Yeah.
within a year and a half, my information is dated. It's outdated. So whatever you learn in college, if you're learning something the professor did like 5-10 years ago, and they just been sitting in the classroom espousing this stuff for the last 5-10 years, they're not cutting edge anymore. The modern business accelerates and changes so fast that the only people who really know it at like what's really going on a day-to-day level are the people actually doing it. And college has become massively overpriced for what you get. It doesn't really matter anymore. Very few people actually work within degrees. And even a lot of the people who used to require degrees at these huge companies don't require degrees anymore. So I think what we're going to see in the next probably year or two is a lot of these people who are at the top of their game are going to start creating like courses or curriculum or something like that, which we've already done. We have a small like brand building course about like how to start and build an apparel brand. And excuse me, I think that's the way to do it because those are the people that are actually doing it in real time. It's cutting edge information. And if you get the right person and they feel responsible for it, like they're going to constantly update all the materials. So whatever you buy from them, if they're legit, it's going to be the best stuff in the world. Stuff that you couldn't pay $100,000 to learn this at any university because it's not there. Like the top marketers aren't sitting at Princeton, like, and in a classroom, like they're out there doing it.
Yeah, that's the truth, man. You got to drop that link here, or I'll post it if you want to shoot it over to me because that's super valuable for people.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure that transcends, kind of like this conversation. Yeah, this is about apparel, but it's also about building a brand. And there's not one person out there today that doesn't need to build a brand.
Yeah, and you work with so many different companies and brands too. I mean, there's almost all product-based companies are almost exactly the same. I mean, probably like 5 to 10 degrees variation depending on what the product is. And those are usually just variations on how it needs to be stored or shipped or sourced or produced. It's not usually a difference of like how you need to market it or the digital side of it. So I think if the audience can take some of these things that apply to apparel brands like we're talking about, realize like the things that you talk about, the things that they've also experienced in their own entrepreneurship journey up to this point, or things they talk about with their friends, there's a massive overlap. Like 80 or 90% of all these businesses have the same problems at the same time. And it's usually very similar solutions too.
Yeah.
It's just that we all feel like we're all alone in the world because we don't talk about the bad shit.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, this, and I love that you brought up college and secondary education. I can personally attest that we have learned more sitting around in a cigar bar than I ever did in college, right? Like ever. And from these groups that we've joined, like RK, like we extract information, build relationships, utilize those relationships to help, what you figured out, I might not have. And then you add that value, and then I try to reciprocate, and we both build stronger together.
Dude, exactly. And like speaking of, because I think it's important for people to understand the downsides and the risks, and that entrepreneurship is not this glossy thing that you see on Instagram where it's all roses and shit. Like, and I've talked about this publicly on my podcast too. Is that like, dude, I almost crashed my whole company in the ground like 2 years ago because I hired a CFO and didn't check his shit, and like I mean, it's my fault. I hired the wrong person and I didn't check what I should have checked. But when we finally realized what was wrong, like, dude, we were not only like, we had three warehouses and a big ass HQ space at the time and 24 people on staff. And I would always ask my CFO, like, hey man, can we hire these people for marketing? Can we do all this stuff? And his answer is always like, let me check. Oh yeah, we can do it. It turns out we could not do it. We could not do it. By the time we found out what was going on, we realized we were losing $20,000 to $30,000 a month, like for a long time. And we're like, Disney, my wife, and we're just looking at her like, what are we gonna do? Like, how are we gonna solve this? And to us, because I'm still a baby in the finance game, still new to it, I had no experience in navigating that. And I was like, oh my God, like what are we going to do? We're like $500,000 in the hole on this stuff. We've got like bills we got to pay. We've got all this overhead. I'm like, holy shit. And then it was a couple key conversations and then led me to you. I had a quick conversation and we'd known each other for a couple years already at that point. And then a quick conversation with you and you're like, oh yeah, it's just this, I got you. And it was like within like a week, we had like a $500,000 SBA loan for like 2.9% that we didn't have to pay back for ended up being 2 years. I'm like, dude, like saved my life. I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. So I think it's a great example of like we're all experts in our own space, and the more people you can interact with and exchange value with, like
Yeah.
the easier it is to find these people who can really plug in in this case, like have a massive impact and effect on our business is something that you do every day. You're like, oh, this is easy, no
Yeah.
problem. And for us, when we deal with a lot of our clients, they're like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. Same thing. We're like, oh yeah, no problem. We got you. We
Yeah.
just do this,
Just
this, and this. And like, poof. So
yeah.
yeah, dude, it's the relationships are the key thing, man. Like just being a good person, doing the right thing, even when it sucks and might cost you money up front, but like
Yep.
always doing the right thing and not burning people and just being a quality friend, man. Like because people like to separate business and people say like, oh, business is just business. Like anybody I've ever heard say business is just business is getting ready to fuck you.
Yes. Yeah. It's gonna hurt.
Yeah. Like, dude, business is relationships,
It
business is
is.
people, and how you do one thing is how you do everything. Like if you're a piece of shit in business, like you're probably kind of a piece of shit in the real world too. You just like maybe nobody knows it yet.
Yeah. You hide it well.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
well, here, let me phrase it to you like this. With all your knowledge, your skill set, right? And your relationships. Most importantly, your relationships and your drive, what you've learned. Do you think you could figure it out if I said, hey, Ryan, work on a different business and build it from the ground up?
Yeah,
The
yeah. I mean,
principles are the same.
yeah. I look at it like anything's possible, right? You can
Yeah.
do anything you want. And when you're I think most people who get into entrepreneurship have it's not a lack of ideas. You
No.
always have a bunch of ideas like, oh, this, I got this. And
Yeah.
in reality, it's harder to say no to those things than it is to say
Yeah.
yes because you know you can do any of it. It's just hard because you got to know what to say no to in order to say yes to something. Because you have a bandwidth issue. So these days, I have a couple basic filters that I apply to every new idea, and I find that once I apply these filters to them, some of these shiny ideas turn out to be not so fucking shiny, but they're pretty simple. I mean, one of them is like, okay, how big is this potential idea? How big could it possibly be? Is this something local? Like, oh, I could be, the best gardener in some zip code. I'm like, not really interested in that. So how big can it possibly be? Um, Next thing is how profitable is it? Like what's the margins on it? Not in the beginning, but like at scale.
Yeah.
Next thing is how much capital would I have to invest in to start up to get it to where it's going to be profitable? Like is it like starting up a range or something like a shooting range, massive amount of red tape, like huge money issues, like it'd be $3 million to start a range, especially here in California. And then the next thing is how long is the timeline does it take to get you from startup to profitability? And then also what's the exit strategy and the bandwidth? Like, is this something that I'm going to have to personally put my bandwidth in
Yeah.
for 5 years? And then can I sell it? Can I not sell it? What do I do with it? So once I apply those 5 filters to it, some of these ideas, I'm like, man, this is great. This is going to be awesome. So much fun. I'm like, man, it's really not as good as idea as I thought it was.
I'd like to add one to that ties into bandwidth because if I thought about this in the last 18 months, I probably would have saved myself about $1 million.
Oof.
Yes. What is your time value of money? Okay, so that ties into profitability and bandwidth. Now think about this. If you know you make, let's just say $100 an hour. If you start that new idea, can it pay you more than $100 an hour? And if the answer is no, you don't walk, you fucking run. Run away.
Yep.
Run away. So that's
No,
another way to look at that.
I agree, man. There's also something because a lot of people it's usually younger entrepreneurs. I don't mean young as an age, but like newer people new to entrepreneurship. They don't realize it takes probably usually 3 to 5 years for a business to spin off enough money where you're making enough money where like you actually feel good about it. And it's very frustrating the first 1 to 2 years or 3 years even because you feel like you're growing, but you don't feel like you have any money in your pocket. There's all these fucking new problems. It's a big pain in the ass. Then you see everybody else in entrepreneurship who's, killing it on the gram. And they're like, dude, I got to get a side hustle. I got to do this other thing. Like, how can I get more money? And I always say it's very simple. Like, the easiest way, usually in most cases, to get more money is to do more of the thing that got you the money in the first place.
Yeah.
You know, if you got something like, oh, I made 50 grand. How can I do something different to make another 50 grand? I'm like, don't do anything different. Just double what
Do
you
more
did.
of it.
Make the original 50,
Yeah.
you know, and just scale what you got. And when my wife and I were looking at, you know, alternative business, just ideas, you know, a couple months ago, we just came back to, honestly, this is the best thing we could do. We just need to make it all work together. And like with the archive, the fulfillment company, industry, the production company, the information products, like the personal brand, I just need to make it all work together more. And it's that same concept. Like I just need to do more of what I'm already doing.
Yep. And figure out what else serves your ideal client, right?
Yeah. And there's a ton of other things. Like you can make, like, you know, baby carriages and like, I don't know, hammocks and like a bunch of other shit. They're cool ideas for everything. But like, dude, the bandwidth issue, I just don't have time to go do all that shit.
Yeah. Man, this is gold. These are always the best. Like, I love these.
Give me rad here too, man.
What?
Give me rad and come out here too. Smoke some cigars in person, shoot some guns.
I can't wait. I went down the rabbit hole the other night and I looked at some, let's just say, high-end guns, and I wish I didn't. You know, you ever go down the rabbit hole and you're like, oh, look, competition shooting. Oh, what's his handle?
Before you buy any of that stuff, just shoot me a text message and, hey, I'm thinking about buying this, and I'll find you an equivalent one. Like my buddy Mike from Sons of Liberty Gunworks, makes great, like fantastic war rifles. They're awesome, and I think they're like maybe $2,000, $2,500, something like that. Yeah. But they're like what I would use. I already bought a different one that, you know, before he started his company, but basic M4. And dude, the gun is not the thing. Like the tool doesn't make the carpenter.
It's the operator. 100%.
Yeah. But we'll have some fun when we get out here, man. We'll go out to the desert, shoot some guns, some stogies in our mouth, get some really cool Instagram photos.
I love it. I can't wait. Well, brother, thank you so much for coming on. Please send me that link like right now so I can post this everywhere. All right. And I'm always here. If you need anything, thank you. Like, you dropped some bombs on this.
Well, dude, I appreciate your help today, man. You just helped me out again today with that one.
Can I tell you something
for you? I'm like, fuck. That's awesome.
Dude, when I got that idea, I was more excited for you than anything. I'm like, oh my God, that's the solution.
I got home from the gym and I told Disney, he's like, bro. I call my wife bro sometimes. I'm like, bro, Jonathan texted me today. I called him, or he called me, like, this is what we got to do. This is the solution we're looking for. Let's fucking do it. It's awesome.
Dude, it'll work. It's gonna work.
I love it, man. This is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Relationships.
Hey, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for having me on, and thank you for the info and insight today.
And I'm always here for you. Take care.
All right, buddy. Bye.